In the sense that we have someone who's very close to a sufferer and indeed who has diabetes type 1. Her name is Tracy, and she's very kindly come into the studio today to talk about it. So Tracy, good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm okay. Tired, but I'm okay.
Brilliant stuff. Right, listen, Tracy, it's your daughter who suffers from it, isn't it?
It is, yeah, Jasmine.
Tell us a little bit more about it, because this has only been in the past 3 months, isn't it?
Yes, yeah. Jazz was diagnosed on the 30th of March. I actually was working right up until the 7th of March, and unfortunately I got made redundant. But everything happens for a reason, and that meant that I was at home more with her, taking more notice of her, because the hours that I was working, I was coming in at 10 o'clock at night and not seeing them. They was in bed by the time I got in. Because I wasn't so tired of a night time, I was hearing her getting up in the middle of the night to go to the toilet. I'd go down to the kitchen to go and get myself a drink, and there'd be all my Coke had been drunk, 2 litres worth of Coke had been drunk. She'd lost an awful lot of weight. She's 5'2", she's my height, and she was under 7 stone. I just put it down to the fact that she was 13, she was going through puberty, getting taller, slimming down, all these little things, which were all the signs that I didn't really take on board. And it was only until she had a few episodes where she was passing out, feeling very drained, and again I thought because she just started her periods, perhaps she was anemic, so we started her on a course of iron. That didn't seem to help at all. And one day I was just sat there playing with her hair. She's got beautiful long red flowing hair, gorgeous, and it was literally coming out in my hand, like the strands were just falling out. In the 3 months that this has gone on, because it's 3 months, you're 3 months into it now as a sufferer of type 1 diabetes, your daughter, how much have you learned? You must have learned things, or had to learn things very quickly about the disease. I didn't have a choice. It's my daughter, and the importance of type 1 is that if she doesn't get the care and the insulin that she needs, it's fatal. It is a life-threatening disease. It's not. Type 2 is a lifestyle disease. Unfortunately, it is preventable. Type 1 is an autoimmune disease, which means that the body basically attacks its own cells, the beta cells that are in the pancreas, and stops producing insulin. So at the time that it was leading up to a diagnosis, the glucose level in her blood was rising and rising and rising, to the point that I later found out that she was a couple of hours away from falling into a coma. Dear me. And does she carry sweets around with her? A lot of these questions are asked all the time. Is it sweets? Is it bananas? Is it Mars bar? What can bring her back round? What is it? Okay. If she goes very, very low, she has a hypo kit, which has got fresh fruit juices in them, which is 100% carb, which is the sugar that will bring her up. She carries glucose tabs, which are like a dextrosol. They're like the little square tablets. And she also carries jelly babies. And we're actually getting a T-shirt made up because jelly babies save lives. Yeah, jelly babies, they're a plus as well. I mean, I like jelly babies. They're brilliant, aren't they? But seriously, in the 3 months now that she's been a sufferer of type 1 diabetes, had you any information or any inkling before this that anything was wrong? No, I didn't even know the difference. And this is, as a mother, which is very, very ignorant, because everybody assumes that, you get your Miriam Stoppard books and you know everything about childcare. I knew nothing about the difference between type 1 and type 2. I just assumed that type 1 was diabetes, but it's kids. Yeah. It's a juvenile diabetes. That's all I knew. I didn't know until she was diagnosed, by doing research on the internet, joining different Facebook support groups, learning, and I've had to teach myself. So you're now something of an expert. Well, you've had to be, really, haven't you, I suppose? I am. I've had no medical background, but with type 1 diabetes, I am an expert. What's the long-term prognosis for your daughter? She will be on insulin for the rest of her life. Right, and is that an injection of insulin? Is that She is. She's on 5 injections a day of rapid insulin. Yeah. 4 injections of rapid insulin, which is every time she eats, every time that something passes her lips that will bring her levels up, has to be injected. Will that continue through her life? Will that get easier, David? Will that get easier as it goes on through her life? It can do. At the moment, she's on a nighttime injection of long-standing insulin as well, which helps the glucose, in the liver. It will be easier because at the moment she's on a honeymoon period, they call it, which is where if you inject something into the body, it's a bit like jump leads. It will automatically kick-start the pancreas to work. So which is dangerous at the moment, because if I give her insulin and all of a sudden her pancreas decides to kick in and produce a bit of insulin, her levels drop.
Right.
And this is what happens of a night time, where I have to go in while she's sleeping and test her at 1 o'clock and 4 o'clock every morning.
So it's a very delicate balance indeed, isn't it?
Absolutely. It is all about balance.
Right, and as we said, to just reiterate that you knew nothing about this before, and it's sort of been thrust upon you. And a lot of it, this is why we when we do a bulletin, we talk to David about diabetes, and we do talk about it a lot. But this is the reason why, because some people's misconceptions. I'm assuming this is right to say that they're putting a bit of weight, or they're putting a lot of weight, and there are two forms of diabetes, and this is one of them, and it's sounding like the more serious one.
It is. Unfortunately, it is a life-threatening illness. The reason that she lost so much weight was because her body went into something called DKA, which is diabetic ketoacidosis. I'm sure I think I've said that right. Which basically means that the levels of glucose in the blood get so high that it spills over from the liver into the kidneys and then comes through the urine. Once the ketones, which they're called, are in the urine, it starts eating away at the fat. Once the fat's gone, it starts eating away at the muscle.
Right.
Once the muscle is gone, it starts eating away at the organs, which is why she was losing her hair, because her organs were starting to shut down.
So it might just be one word that people know as diabetes, but it's a very complex thing, isn't it? And this is why we're discussing it today, listeners. Tracey, thank you very much indeed. Can I just say, or can I just ask you, what advice would you give to mums in your situation, and indeed anybody right now, with regard to diabetes, if you see signs or whatever?
Well, the most important things are, especially over in Spain, because it's not just the sugar levels that it's not the sugar intake that affects her levels, it's everything. It's excitement, it can be stress, it's an accumulation of everything, but especially the heat. Now, if your kid is thirsty, if you're noticing that they're drinking a lot, don't put it down to the fact that it's hot, and they're thirsty. If they're tired, don't put it down to the fact that they've been playing outside in the sun and they're shattered. If they're grumpy or stroppy, don't put it down to teenage strops, which I did. If they're going to the toilet a lot, don't necessarily think it's because they're drinking a lot. If they're losing weight, we do a lot of outdoor activities over here, and the kids are playing on the beach, they're swimming.
They're always out and about doing something,
Absolutely.
aren't they? Yeah.
If they're hungry all the time, that's the other thing. Don't assume that they've been in the pool for 3 hours and they're really, really hungry. Jazz was hungry constantly, but she was under 7 stone. And with teenage girls, obviously because Jazz is 13, she was going through that time. When she started her periods, they stopped. I put it down to the fact that her body was settling down. It wasn't. It was because her organs were closing down.
So always investigate and always ask for help. Never be afraid to do that.
Never.
And look at these signs, because they are signs, aren't they? Well, clearly there were signs of diabetes in Jazz's case, but always look for signs and never be afraid to ask questions.
No.
Tracey, thank you for joining us. Very, very important things to say today, and thank you very much for being with us.
You're more than welcome.
We wish Jazz success, by the way.
Thank you.
Thank you.